Is this on? Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Hi, everybody. Welcome to our kickoff event for NJACS, which is also a catalyst event for the Institute for Health, Healthcare Policy, and Aging Research. We are really excited to have all of you in the room today. We had a huge amount of people who are interested in this, and so we had about 130 who signed up. We have space for about 90 here in the room, and we're live streaming. So this is a really exciting event today, and we're really happy to have you all here. I think you all have the agendas in your folders today, and we have a bunch of things that are scheduled. Unfortunately, Ray Panettieri is out of the country today, and he couldn't be here with us, but he did send his regards and a video message that we're going to play this morning, and then I'm going to welcome up Dr. Dong from the Institute for Health, and we're going to kick off and get started with our keynote. So with that, I'm going to ask Bill to start the video.
Good morning. I welcome you all to this fantastic retreat, the first of its kind, the Community Engagement Core. Now, the NJACS, which stands for the New Jersey Alliance for Clinical and Translational Science, is a consortium of 3 institutions. The home institution is Rutgers, followed by Princeton University and NJIT, all of which are geared to one mission. The mission is to improve clinical and translational science across New Jersey and to interface with as a hub with the consortium. The consortium is approximately 48 other institutions across the country, all engaging in translational and clinical research. The concept, the conceptual model, is that the community generates questions and will receive data from the other cores to answer the questions. So we're really looking for a partnership, not only amongst the academics, but also the members of all the communities. The resources that have been dedicated for the effort generated by individuals engaged in the project is important, but also the pilot grants that are going to be given from the community to enhance the engagement is very, very important. This is the first of its kind platform across all of New Jersey, building clinical and translational research. We want to compete with the best, and we're going to give our best. I wish you the very, very most useful and productive retreat. And again, my apologies for not being there, but I really look forward to hearing all the wonderful things you've done today. Have a great morning.
So with that, I'm going to actually invite Dr. XinQi Dong up from the Institute for Health to give a few opening remarks. Thanks, XinQi.
Good morning, everyone. You know, Catalyst program was started about a year ago back. And the primary goal of the Catalyst program was really to get people in the same sphere and talk about common interests, explore collaborations, and build products together. And the Institute for Health is about almost 35 years old. We have about 155 members from 30 different units of Rutgers, as well as across the country. The first Catalyst program was focused on healthy aging. And from the first Catalyst program, we've had numerous grant writing workshops. We've putting 2 P Center grants together collectively from various units of Rutgers, as well as from New Jersey. We've given multiple pilot fundings away. I think we give away probably about 10 pilot fundings over the last year. And then we'll continue, the group continue to meet, becomes a strategic planning and pillar for the Institute moving forward in terms of aging thematics. The second Catalyst program we ran was on population health. that Joe Cantor took the lead on. And that really brought together a lot of different people as well. That's culminating to actually the beginning phase of a very large New Jersey-based longitudinal cohort study, a sample size as large as potentially 10,000 people, to be conducted over the next 4 years. And so this, is really no different in terms of where the Institute is hoping that the Catalyst programs and goals will continue to evolve. And I think that's really exciting about, the new NJ Acts and the Institute's missions moving forward collectively. And I think this is dissemination implementation role of community has been a really strong component of the Institute for many decades and will remain so moving forward, and especially towards our next strategic planning, which is coming up in the end of October as well. And last night, also another pleasure of running the Catalyst program like this is really get to know the people. One charge for you over today as you mingle and learn about each other and from each other as well. That last night we had dinner with the steering committee, and we had nice wine and dinner, and I learned quite a bit about the steering committee members, and I want to thank Shawna for organizing and raise support as well. But amongst the committee members, okay, you have to find out, there's a lot of professional dancers and band players in the room here. We have swing dancers, we have break dancers, we have foxtrotters, we have ballroom dancers, and we have band players who are from the committee members. So your job, in addition to think about the discussion going to take place and learn from each other. And I think that's, at the end of the day, the collegiality and that we inspire from those kind of activities is just as much fun as the science that we instill. So Shawna, thank you. And I think, where are you, Shawna? You're here. So thank you for organizing this, and it's going to be a wonderful event.
So with that, I actually want to acknowledge our program planning committee who helped us today. So if you guys can stand up if you're in the room, Ben Crabtree, Carolyn Heckman, Tom Mackey, and I saw Gregory Peck. He was here. I think he came out and he's coming. There's Greg, and Greg Peck. So those are our program committee members who have helped us to pull this together. A lot of people were interested in implementation science, and we wanted to come up with a format that was going to be engaging and useful to all of our different stakeholders here today. So I want to thank them for their help. As well, I'm going to just take a couple of minutes because NJAX is new and the community engagement component of it is new to sort of just orient you to what NJAX is, what our charge is from the funder, and then what we're hoping to do and accomplish with you over the next 5 years of this project and hopefully beyond. So just to give you a sense of what the scope is of the program. Ray talked about sort of the pillars and the concept behind the CTSA. As you can see from this slide here, there are approximately 60 sites that are funded across the country. And as Ray mentioned, this is the first one that's been funded in New Jersey and is a consortium between Rutgers University, Princeton University, and the New Jersey Institute of Technology. The primary goal for NJAX is to train and cultivate translational science workforce. So that means all different stakeholders from individuals in schools of public health, pharmacies, in social work. We're looking across the health sciences as well as medical and nursing. Our goal is to engage patients and communities in every phase of translational science. So we want to make sure that our basic scientists are addressing issues that are relevant to the community as well as our population scientists. The goal of the CTSA is to integrate special populations, and New Jersey in particular is particularly diverse given all of the different groups that we have here in this very small area. So we have a lot of population in a very small, dense area and are looking to capitalize on the heterogeneity that we have across the groups. Our goal is to introduce innovative processes, so some of which we will bring from New Jersey to the consortium, but others we'll be bringing from the consortium as resources here. And so Jeff is going to be talking about some of the things that they've been doing at the University of Arkansas. Melissa's going to be talking about some of the things that have been happening in Chicago at Northwestern. And so we're hoping to learn from their their sites as well as to be able to engage. And then the other piece of this that's a really large component of the CTSA is informatics. And so a lot of you have heard about learning healthcare systems, and that's a cornerstone of the CTSA programs. They're really looking to develop capacity, and so we have a lot of opportunities here with the merger with RWJ Barnabas and also with our academic medical sites and centers here to really sort of engage with building the informatics infrastructure to be able to do some really high-quality population-based science. So in terms of our community engagement core, we had two aims that we went into the grant with. And so our first aim was to engage stakeholders. And so to do that, we went through a process of trying to figure out, first of all, who are the stakeholders and what are the needs. And one of the things that we found here in New Jersey in particular, and Al Talia is my co-chair on the community engagement core, is that there are also already a lot of activities that are happening. All of you in this room are already doing a lot of work, doing a lot of outreach across the state, working with organizations, and if your community group's already working with researchers in many ways. So what we wanted to do was to be an additive support to that work and to help coordinate with some of that work rather than to become yet another group who's doing the same things that you're already doing. So what we did is we've convened a community advisory council. All of our folks are listed in the program who are our community advisory council, and actually some of you are in the room, so Rob, Karen, others, if you guys could stand up so that people can see you. Part of what we'd like to do today is to actually engage in conversations. Come on, Miriam, stand up. And I think some of our community partners, Jamie is not here, but will be coming later on in the day. So we want to actually use the time to be able to talk and to engage with you. So we have a community advisory council that helps us with stakeholders across different settings. We just developed a grant program, which Ray had mentioned in his remarks. So it's a Community Partnership Innovation Accelerator. We actually had a great turnout. So there were about 24 applicants that came in, and I have to applaud many of you in the room who submitted because it was a very short turnaround. We got our funding in March. They wanted the funding to go out by the end of this month, and so we apologize for the short turnaround, and now that we know that we will have this funding opportunity, we'll actually put it out on a more regular basis so people will be able to plan for it in the future. But a really great response, and so we're looking at those applications and sending the finalists up to NCATS this month to be able to get approved and moving forward. The other thing that we were tasked with is to create what we're calling a network of networks, which is really to link partners across New Jersey with different interests. So we see ourselves as a match.com for researchers and for community and for healthcare stakeholders, so that as people are having ideas or projects, rather than you trying to figure out who within our consortium institutions you should be working with, you should think about us as the first stop to see how can we help you figure out how to make the connections for the work that you're doing. And then in addition to that, training, basically giving some support to our academic partners as well as our community partners to be able to talk to each other. So there are a lot of resources within the CTSA consortium that we can actually bring to bear, and so we are now developing and redoing our website so that we can actually push out a lot of those resources and make them more broadly available to the community. So that's our engaged community piece. And then the other piece of this is engaging the community and transferring knowledge in novel community ways for engagement. So basically today, part of what we're trying out are different opportunities and different options. So within the CTSA networks, there are opportunities. We're going to be doing a couple of fish bowls this afternoon. So those are highly interactive. The goal is to get you guys asking questions, as well as we'll have some panelists here who are going to ask the researchers who have ideas. They're trying to get feedback on their projects. They're sort of at the the early phase of the work and really wanting to get some feedback early on so you can incorporate it as opposed to reporting it out at the end. So we're going to do the fish bowls. The bulk of what we are doing through the CTSA is consultations. So we have a number of people who have signed up for D&I consults tomorrow with our keynotes, and as well throughout the year there are opportunities for different types of consultations. So part of your evaluation, if you have things that you would like consultation on, and again, we go across the translational science area, we also go across all of the different content areas, list those, because what we're trying to do now is to build the resources, build a database so that we can actually connect you and be a really efficient match.com in this area. And so with that, I'm going to kick off. So this is the agenda. You guys have it in your program. As you can see, we are pretty packed today, but we've actually made sure that there is time for discussion and for questions, and we really want to encourage you to actually engage with the speakers and with us throughout the day. So with that, I'm going to actually introduce Dr. Geoffrey Curran, who is our first keynote speaker. Jeff comes to us from the University of Arkansas Medical Sciences, and he is a widely known researcher in implementation science, has done a lot of work in research design methodology, and is well known for the hybrid design studies. He's really going to talk to us a lot about sort of breaking down D&I today and disparities and the work that they've been doing in their center. I've been very fortunate to know Jeff for many, many years. He'll talk a little bit about that. He will decide whether he wants to let you know if he's the break dancer or not in our group later on today, but we're very fortunate to have him. So with that, I'm going to actually let Jeff come up and tell you more about himself.
Oh, great. Well, hello, thank you for having me. And it's really cool to be here to help you folks kick off this really wonderful, new grant, your new core. Our topics that I'll cover today are a little wide-ranging. Shawna asked me to give a little background about, what is this sort of D&I science? So I'll cover a few definitions, a few key concepts around models and measurement. After that, I'll spend some time talking about the kinds of D&I science work that we have been doing on our campus. And also talk about how that work is linked to our CTSA, and to sort of share how we approach doing this sort of work in our CTSA, which is a bit different than I think how y'all are doing it. But there are varying models of how to do so. And then the last part of my talk, I will spend some more in the topic area of how D&I science could contribute to reducing disparities, okay? And my final slide or comments is kind of my own view of how I think that we're actually doing with that blend so far. So thank you to my current funders who helped me to be here today. So I come from Arkansas. Every time I give a talk, I always ask, all right, so who's been to Arkansas? Show of hands. Hey, that's pretty good. It's like 8%. So here's a map. The state's in red. We're in the Mid-South. The top left is our new gleaming cool hospital, and then below some key sites the Clinton Museum, minor league baseball park, River Walk. It's super nice. You all should come visit today or tomorrow. Okay, so a bit more on sort of who I am. So I am a sociologist by training. I got my PhD in 1996 from Rutgers University. So I haven't been back in quite a while. So we were in Lucy Stone Hall, which is still here, I guess, but you can't see it because of all of these other fine, cool and new buildings. So I have spent, most of the time since in the medical school in a psychiatry department, first doing more generic services research in that area, which focused on access, quality. But I started doing, more card-carrying D&I science about 1998, so about 20 years ago, in the VA. So at that time, they started a national program which was very innovative at the time to try to move the dial in a number of sort of key evidence-based guideline areas, but also having a separate funding mechanism for research to help us to try to learn how best to do those things in the context of a large healthcare system trying to move these dials. And that was really a great experience and is still. Since then, I've done lots of other work by other funders. Most of the work that me and my group have done is really focused on creating and testing implementation strategies in support of the uptake of certain evidence-based practices or guidelines, okay? In the VA, we got started largely only focusing on mental health practices and contexts, because our group was sort of a key mental health services group anyway, and then we were tasked to take on this aspect of it, okay? And as Shawna mentioned, I've also done and keep on doing work around methods in D&I science, design, and things like that. Okay, a few caveats. So I and our team really focus on supporting uptake of clinical interventions within healthcare systems. So our group really comes at this from, we think of ourselves and call ourselves sort of health system researchers in this area. So I think D&I science, has at its core, this notion of, working with communities to help build, design, adapt intervention to tailor uptake strategies. But I wouldn't call us really like card-carrying members of sort of the CE group or CBPR experts. Also, too, a number of us, also work around disparities in our state and in our group. A lot of it is focused on rural healthcare and rural access, and trying to bring more evidence-based practice to highly underserved rural areas. But I would say that, again, most of us are not really sort of card-carrying members of disparities research, okay? My co-author on this talk is a junior faculty member with us. She's absolutely great, and she is actually focusing her career on this intersection of D&I science and trying to use it to reduce disparities. And I actually pull from some of her and our work. All right, so what is this science? What are we talking about? I have here a common definition that's often used, and it was reported in the first article from our now flagship journal. The scientific study of methods to promote the systematic uptake of research findings and other evidence-based practices into routine practice. Okay? So really, the study of how best to support uptake of evidence-based practices, or the de-uptake of either non-evidence-based practices or unsafe practices. And its goal as a science is to create generalizable knowledge. So I am somebody who often likes to use very non-science-y language when I talk about this stuff, because even among folks who have been doing it for a while, it can be hard to follow. So here's sort of the super non-science language version. So I often refer to the intervention, the practice, the innovation which we're trying to support uptake of. I call that the thing. Effectiveness research focuses on whether the thing works, meaning when patients get the intervention that they get better. Implementation research focuses more on how best to help the people and places to do the thing, to actually deliver it when they should and in a high quality way. So our main interventions, which are often called implementation strategies, are the stuff we do to try to help the people and places to do the thing. These are our interventions which we're testing to try to promote uptake. I have a slide shortly which shows you far too many of those which we're currently developing and testing. And our main outcomes in our kind of work are focused on how much and how well those people are doing the thing. So it's not, oftentimes our primary outcomes are not sort of the effectiveness of some intervention on patient level outcomes, but it's more about the process and how the people and places that we're trying to train to do the thing actually do it when they should, and when they do it, that they do it well. Okay? So we got the thing, we got the do the thing, and our stuff is more about the do the thing. Okay? This also works great when you're trying to tell like your parents or your loved ones or your aunt, like, what are you doing? It's like, we're trying to get people to do the thing. And they go, oh! And they go, oh, okay. So I'll spend a bit of time on the stuff that we do, our interventions, implementation, strategies as we call them, using the strategies word to help us differentiate from the intervention which we're trying to help be adopted. I'm drawing next from a few papers from 2015, some folks from our group and others from WashU, who came up with now a fairly widely used taxonomy of these kinds of strategies. Sadly, they came up with 73 discrete strategies, and that's a fairly high number. They did a concept mapping process to try to boil that down into certain categories of types of strategies, and those are in black. I'm not going to go over each one, but I'm sure that many of these look familiar. You've tried a bunch. Training, educating stakeholders, supporting, reminding clinicians, audit and feedback, needs assessment, PDSA cycles, policy mandates, changing record systems, things like that, okay? And so the key for me that I see in our science, which we're really trying to deal with now, is to test packages of the strategies which we hope work in a reliable way to support the uptake of certain kinds of practices. So a lot of the funded work is people trying to do needs assessment, apply packages of these strategies, and try to show that they actually work in moving the dial to help uptake of evidence-based practices, or the de-uptake of practices, which we would like people to now stop doing. Okay. Okay. Outcomes. The how much and how well construct. These are our main outcomes. I list here really the most commonly used framework to help people guide to know what to measure. The R and the E and the A and the I and the M refer to these categories on our right, here's sort of the no lingo version of REAIM. Reach. Who got the thing among those who should have gotten it? Effectiveness, I've already covered that. Adoption, how much the thing was delivered. The I is how well the thing was delivered. And M, maintenance, is all of these over time, because we don't want people to just do it for 2 seconds or 2 months. We actually want people to keep on doing it. As a forecast for later, I have a green check by the 2 key areas from REAIM, which are often the focus of people in this area who are trying to focus on disparities. Okay, so trying to really work on the reach issue and on adoption. So this one came out in 1999, and it's still widely used. I mean, it's been cited like 400 million times. There's a newer version, it's not that new now, by Reynold Proctor and colleagues. Lots of, like, the same REAIM constructs are in here too, but they took it farther to have us contemplate, other key outcomes: acceptability, appropriateness, cost of the implementation strategies that we are using, because we need to have and do a cost effectiveness of the strategies that we use, because our healthcare providers want us to give them, parsimonious, low-cost strategies, which is not always possible. So for disparities work, I've also checked a few of the key measures here that seem to make the most sense to use when you're doing this kind of science to actively try to reduce disparities. Equity's up there. Okay. My last slide in this section kind of deals more with, okay, so when do we do this D&I work? Like, when do we start actually doing this? So in 1998, when I first started, this kind of was how it looked, and I call this the traditional pipeline. And there was this notion of, okay, we have to finish, for lack of a better word, or do small scale, highly controlled efficacy trials, show that these interventions have a good effect in these highly controlled conditions. Next, move to larger effectiveness trials, more in the community, but there's still RCTs, and then show that they work in these kinds of studies. And then, and sometimes only then, did people want folks like me to start to figure out, okay, how do we get these done in the real world? Okay? And the first VA RFA in this area basically said, you will not get funded unless you work with a highly effective multi-RCT intervention. So I often use this relay race analogy where the baton is the intervention that is ready for dissemination, and there's a clinical researcher who's worked on it, and they're ready to hand it off to someone like me, and I'm sort of there at the end, you know, the last leg, and I have my hand out, and they hand it to me, and then I sit there and I go, okay, I got to figure out how to get people to do this. And I didn't have much of a role in developing it, and that might be not such a great thing. So, 20 years later, a lot of people have written a lot of things about trying to break down the silos and to blend this kind of work. I won't go over these papers. I will cover the hybrid design stuff later on. But I think that, you know, while this is a pipeline which maybe hasn't been radically altered, there's a lot more work now where people are trying to explore effectiveness questions and how best to uptake questions at the same time in the same studies. And if we're not doing that, at best, we're going too slow, and at worst, we're actually creating some problems, we're finding some wrong answers. And I think, frankly, the whole thrust of D&I science, the whole reason why we have this, is we recognize that we're too slow at this with natural diffusion. We need to speed up. We need to get these practices out there. And so if we take these slow steps, it's going to take us a long time. And sort of forecasting for my later topic, I actually think that this kind of mixing of these kinds of questions on effectiveness and uptake success and blending those is really key to integrating D&I science with disparities research and actually reducing disparities. Okay, so a little bit about what we're doing in this area on my campus. So about 5 years ago, we started a new center in this area with seed money from the College of Medicine, College of Pharmacy, our Chancellor's office also. And our goals are as follows, and they're fairly basic goals. The first goal is to build more implementation research coming from our campus. And this goal was to be a generic center and really help people coming from any and all colleges, from any and all contexts. And that's what we're doing, which has its own challenges, frankly. Our next goal is trying to help the healthcare system to learn lessons from our science to help them do better QI type work. So trying to translate from our science to help the change processes already happening in our clinical system to do a better job. And then to train future generations of people who are doing the science but are also in the clinical system who are change agents who are trying to keep on doing QI work and keep on making quality changes. I show this to you, just to give you a sense of the fairly small size of our center. The core faculty are people that receive some core funding from our center budget to help us with our work. Our CTSA is now helping to co-fund our center and co-fund these folks too. I list these affiliated faculty here to just kind of give you a sense of the range of people that are coming to us for help in trying to work on their D&I science project. So all of these folks are folks that we've helped to get funded, whether through a CTSA mechanism, KL2, even a pilot, but also lots of R awards and Ks. And in the red, I have that there to just show you that we're drawing people from all of our colleges: medicine, pharmacy, public health, nursing, and health-related professions. So we're really trying to meet our goal of we are taking any comer who wants to talk to us and get help with these grants. Here's a flavor of some of the grants that are currently or recently funded. And I show you these just to see the range of the contexts and interventions that we're supporting. We're in clinics, we're in childcare, we're in churches, doing lots of different work, okay? So we have a CTSA, like y'all do, and well done. So we had ours for 5 years, and in the first 5 years, D&I science was not at all part of that process. We actually showed up and tried to volunteer and say, hey, we can be helpful. And they were sort of like, that's wonderful. So anyway, back to the bench science. However, in the latest RFAs, more and more emphasis was placed on this, and our center grew sort of in the middle of our old award and the almost 4 years it took to get the renewal. So we were in limbo for quite a while, actually. So in this last application, our center helped to write an optional module, which is like a sidecar project which you got to add to your CTSA. I think that y'all have one, right? And so we partnered with our CTSA to have them to help us with our mission, and our mission certainly helped theirs too. So it was a great match, and that optional module seemed to work really, really well as a vehicle for that. So here are our aims from our optional module, and as you can tell, the first two are identical to the goals of our center anyway. So there's a lot of overlap. The third one gives me a little stress, and we're not going to start that one until year 2. But we have some grand plans about trying to build a practice-based network in D&I science in rural primary care. Now, we've been doing work in rural primary care for a while, but we're actually trying to build a lab where we do this work, and it's a place for the scholars that we train in that area to actually go and work. So here's some of the stuff that we are doing in our center, and now supported by the TRI. We have a couple of graduate courses which more and more people are taking. The first course, I've been teaching that in our College of Public Health for about 12 plus years now. The second course we just finished, and we're going to offer it for the first time in the spring. We have a lot of KL2 scholars, a lot of postdocs, and frankly, a lot of faculty members who want to get into this kind of work. We have a visiting scholars program, a journal club. We have a monthly group lightning round consultation where our center meets once a month, and folks sign up for 30, 45 minutes to come and get a group consult on their project, on their aims, kind of like what we're actually going to do later. And it's normal for those projects to come through 2 of those, one kind of early with the aims page, and then one later to deal with research plan challenges and where people are stuck. And so lots of the grants that I showed you that we've worked on and have gotten funded have been through that process, usually twice. Here's some of the new stuff that we are going to do. I've sent our module to Shawna, happy to have it read by anybody. The one thing I will note here is the top one, which I'm really excited about. We have proposed and are starting to do now a clinician scholars program. It's a 2-year program. We have a short course in year 1 around needs assessment, D&I models, strategies, and to help people in their clinical areas to work on a gap, find barriers, develop strategies, and then to go do a pilot test. And then in year 2, it's more about evaluation and writing it up and to actually, write a paper and to turn in a paper. We are perfectly comfortable with this being a service for our clinical service. And so if these scholars want to stop here in their learning and just apply their new knowledge in more and more projects, we think that that's great and matches a CTSA goal of trying to better integrate the science folks with the clinical enterprise. However, we do hope that a few of these scholars will kind of get excited about this science, and then they can move into our other coursework. If they want to write an R, a K, we have been doing that for a long time, and we can help them, okay? And I'll keep going. Okay, cross CTSA work. They really want us to do that. And so that's what we're doing right now. So, woohoo, high five. Here are some of the other things that we are doing, a lot of workshops, consultations. There's a number of CTSAs who are just trying to get in to do this D&I work. We're really excited about this brand new thing. We just got funding to do a 5-state, 100 rural community pharmacy network for D&I science. There's none other like it, and I'm so excited about it. Okay. Of note, our whole CTSA is focused on rural health. And our center is and has been for a long time. We are from Arkansas. It's largely rural, and there are some super rural places. So CTSA, ours, really wants to try to work to have more people from rural areas to be part of research. We want a lot more of co-creating research with these communities, people from rural areas. And for our center, a key focus is trying to improve delivery of EBPs in these areas. How much time?
We're going all the way into the half hour, so we really want to take some time for some questions.
Okay, disparities. So how can D&I science be leveraged to help disparities research? So these next few slides, I'm actually going to draw from this paper, which we wrote and published in medical care in 2017. So we framed it as disparities can be considered a special case of uptake challenges. When evidence-based practices are delivered to or received by vulnerable populations at lower rates than majority populations, this is a problem where I think that we can be helpful. And so I think a key point here is how can better, different, or more uptake strategies help to improve more equal delivery of evidence-based practices? I mean, I think that's really sort of the key question here. So in our paper, we looked at this research framework from Amy Kilborn, which talked about 3 phases of disparities research. 1, detecting where are they? Next, understanding why are there disparities, trying to figure out determinants, and then the 3rd phase, actually trying to reduce and study how best to. So we think that D&I science can especially help in these, sort of red marked areas, which I'll cover shortly here. So in the phase 2 part around trying to find determinants. So our science has developed a number of, some say far too many, determinant frameworks which can help to find determinants of non-equal delivery of evidence-based practices. A colleague at WashU wrote a paper a few years ago finding like 63 determinant or other frameworks. There's a lot. I've listed here 3 of the most commonly used, okay? I'll focus only on one for a few minutes. It's called Seifer. Who has heard of this before? Lots of you. It's a compilation of either theory-driven and or evidence-based factors that seem to help drive uptake. And there are, of course, 37 factors. They are categorized in these 5 areas: intervention and characteristics, inner and outer setting, provider characteristics, and process, which I take to sort of be what should the strategies be. So in our paper, we argued that much of the current and past work on disparities focus mostly on these purple areas: more patient factors, more provider factors. I think that using this kind of a framework and these kinds of frameworks and these kinds of D&I lenses can point us to a number of other factors which I don't think have been looked at a whole lot in current work, which could have a lot to do with the non-equal delivery and maintenance of the non-equal delivery. And some of these haven't gotten a whole lot of attention, and I think that this is a key area where our kind of science could actually be helpful. In the same vein, our science has also developed a number of useful processes for studying barriers, facilitators to uptake, which could be used focused on disparities. Stettler et al. Published a really widely cited paper which talked about diagnostic formative evaluation, trying to understand the context of non-adoption, of non-receipt. It's mixed method stuff. It's stuff that you've heard about. But what's key about it here is, using some of these D&I frameworks to guide the assessment of those barriers, and then match strategies to those barriers that are found. I also want to say, too, that in the past 5 to 7 years, our field has actually done a pretty good job in generating validated surveys to help us learn more about some of these key Seifer and other constructs. So not to just do qualitative work, but also to do survey work on a larger scale. So we have a number of new short validated surveys kind of in these areas: feasibility, acceptability, org readiness, culture, climate, leadership, and those can also be very, very helpful. Phase 3, intervening, like I said, I really think that the key value point here is to develop and test new uptake strategies that are aimed at this delivery problem. I note kind of one currently funded and new project here in our group focused on trying to translate clinical pharmacy practices that are relatively commonly offered in urban and large-scale system primary care, but in rural primary care, it never, ever happens. And so those patients are simply not receiving those highly effective interventions. So we're trying to use telehealth to deliver those practices. But it's not just about the telehealth. We actually need a suite of uptake strategies to help these clinics and these patients and these providers to be ready, willing, and able to actually use this. And so it's a lot of stuff around education, workflow, role functioning, infrastructure changes. So it isn't just changing a practice, it's changing the way it is delivered and changing how those people and places are prepared and supported to be able to actually offer it. I will say this. Our field, I think, is really well behind many of the CE and CBPR folks in this room relative to co-developing and co-adapting strategies with stakeholders. I think that's partially a function of a lot of us come from, the health system world, and we focused a lot on systems level stuff, provider stuff, and we really just do not do a good job yet of partnering, with patients, communities, who are underserved. So we have a lot to learn from y'all. I think there is progress happening. This is a brand new framework which is trying to help D&I science to move in this area and how to better partner and to co-create interventions and strategies. And there are 6 nice steps here. I think it raises a key question. Their point is we need more interventions and new interventions, new clinical preventive interventions, and to learn more from communities to help us to do that and kind of start from scratch. I can say that in our group for a long time, we've mostly been taking the approach, for better or worse, on adapting existing evidence-based practices and trying to make those work in new contexts and new populations. I think that's an open question for us of when one might be better than the other. So I'm going to stop now. I have a few other things to say. So these hybrid designs, I think, can be certainly helpful with this sort of co-studying of the effectiveness of interventions while we're also trying to learn what strategies are needed or what strategies work in order to help us to do those, especially when, to speed the process, you kind of need to focus to varying degrees on both of those questions at the same time. Okay? In our paper from 2017, we have a decision tree for disparities to help kind of understand what kind of hybrid might make sense depending upon how much knowledge that you have about the intervention and how it works in certain populations, and also how much knowledge that you have about barriers to uptake, strategies that seem promising, strategies that you've already pilot tested, and so where, in that pipeline might you need to focus. Okay, I was going to talk about smart designs. So who's heard of smart designs? I kind of have a crush on them at the moment, and so some of our new grants are focusing here. It's this notion from clinical research, which is now catching on in D&I, of kind of starting with maybe a lower level strategy that might be more cost effective, easier to use, and starting with everybody doing that, and then measuring response, and then randomizing the non-responders to some new strategies, either like a higher dose of some or new strategies. And I just absolutely love it. Okay, let's wrap this up. So how are we doing on integrating these issues? From the D&I science point of view, I think we're kind of really early still. A number of years ago, you would go to national meetings and hear, we could do this. And then a few years later, it's like, hey, we should be doing this. And then now it's sort of, hey, we're actually starting to do this. So there are more frameworks out there happening to help us to do better. Folks like in this room are talking and trying to figure this out. A number of projects in the last maybe 4 or 5 years have been funded that are focusing on this from sort of the main D&I panel. But I would say, I think that we have a long way to go for the ultimate outcome. Our healthcare providers, our communities want us to be able to tell them, here are some proven strategies that help reduce disparities. And I'm not sure that we're there yet, but I think we're on our way. Okay, questions, comments, heckling. I'm happy for all of those. I will plug my colleague Eva's brand new, hot off the presses, kind of complicated new equity framework. It would take me 10 minutes to go through all of those things, but it's very cool, and try it and use it. Okay, comments, please.
See, it does work. That's a really great talk, and I think really great work and great direction for our CTSA and around the country. I'm wondering about that passing the baton analogy. If you can give like 1 or 2 sort of concrete examples of how either the thing didn't work quite as well as it could have or should have if implementation science had gotten involved earlier, or of successes of implementation science being involved earlier in the process of effectiveness research.
Okay, so When I first started, our starting point a lot was we tried dissemination or a few strategies and they didn't work. So we need help from you guys to try to do a better job. Okay. I think now there's a lot of published of these hybrid type 1 studies, which it's largely still clinical effectiveness trials, but having this process aim there to study uptake during the trial to help us to understand what kind of strategies worked, what didn't, and to forecast what barriers might actually be there for the future. So I think with more of that happening, I think things are actually starting to move faster. And there's a movement too about trying to, when you're starting to develop a new intervention, to have D&I folks there too, applying some of these frameworks. So at the very start, you think about implementability, to make up a word, of those interventions right off the bat to try to save some time. So, you know, I mean, it might not be perfect, but interventions themselves might have characteristics which lend themselves to easier uptake. I think it's happening.
Jeff, thank you again. That was a really excellent talk. Can you say a little bit more about, in terms of engagement of communities? I mean, communities in New Jersey are extraordinarily diverse, and say a little bit about how engagement of communities has affected, in your experience, the thing.
Okay, so we first started really talking more to other non-academic systems of care, federally qualified health care centers, like publicly funded mental health programs, substance use programs. And then from there, because lots of those folks also have community boards, we started to work with those kinds of folks, and also to work with community health groups who are training community health workers who can help to be facilitators, interventionists. So, you know, that has helped us certainly with how best to adapt interventions, to change the thing. Like I said, we have normally been starting with currently evidence-based practices which are not being delivered or used in these underserved places. So we use those folks to help us to adapt those to try to fit better in their communities, but also to help us with what should the uptake strategies be, either patient-facing ones, but also ones in the clinic. How do you want to be screened? How do you want to be referred? Is this kind of service even in your wheelhouse of something that you want to do? And then if not, and it's like, no, actually all of the practices that you could send us to now, I'm not exactly sure that that's what we want. And then you kind of have to back up and go, okay, let's make something new. Sure.
So my question is related to this issue of when in the process do you ask the question, if the evidence-based practice wasn't developed on multicultural, diverse populations, is it actually still evidence-based and should it be implemented? Or should it, how long do you spend testing it? And so one quick example, in the working with families with a seriously mentally ill family member, Bill McFarland's multifamily group therapy worked really well in European American families. They tended to be parents who were isolated, didn't have other people to talk to. Didn't work as well in African American, Latino families. One, because they had bigger family networks, they weren't so isolated, and two, stigma processes were really different. So how do you, I mean, so, you know, you could take McFarland's, which was developed as an evidence-based practice, and disseminate it, but when do you ask the question, is this really evidence-based across all the populations we might want to work with, and how do you address that question?
Well, do we have like 3 hours? So I think it kind of depends on the nature of the evidence, how robust people think that that might actually be, what are there proven mechanisms of action of those interventions that seem like it would be likely to translate to new populations. Oftentimes, seeking input from communities on these issues can be helpful to better understand, okay, should we try to adapt, or is this just a non-starter, and do we need something else? A key reviewer panel fight is oftentimes on this issue, generically, frankly, about how much evidence is enough to start doing D&I work and what kind. Hybrid type 1 stuff, or 2 or 3. I'm not sure I have a great answer to that. But this is what we've tried.
So I was going to, is it working? Okay. So I was actually going to say, it looks like we're sort of close to the end of this. However, this is actually a great question and transition into our next keynote.
Who is going to solve this?
Who is going to solve this issue for us?
For
yes,
us, which
definitely.
is so awesome.
Definitely.
So thank you.
So we're going to take about 5 minutes just to get set up for her talk, and then come back in, and we'll continue the conversations. And as you guys have questions for either of the keynotes, we'll make sure that there's time at the end of the next one to be able to bring things back that may emerge from both of the talks. So great.